love, ready to love. Come on in, everyone. This is a season, episode 7, I believe. Episode 7 for Ready to Love. Come on in and take a seat. My name is Deborah, and we're going to be talking about this for a while, y'all, because there was a lot to talk about on this episode. And I got what I wanted, y'all. I got to see a date between Mark Anthony and Mercedes to see the chemistry, and we're going to talk about that too. But before we get through all the dates, because that's the format I like to go through, is to actually break down each date, each interaction, whatever you want to call it. Before we do that, we had to get through this old business, and shoot, this old business took up darn near half the episode this time, y'all. And when I say old business, I'm saying the same old stuff, the same old Jeffri coming out the box, calling a Sue advocate. At this point, I'm kind of believing that Jeffri's kind of like a bully. She's kind of like a bully, because I'm telling you, whatever Sue said to her or did to her that we saw on camera, it's not worth all this energy. It really isn't worth all this energy. At this point in time, I'm not quite sure why Jeffri continues to have so much heat for Sue. Same thing with Morgan. We're going to talk about her, how she really lost herself this episode. But even when Jeffri was going in on Sue, Morgan was enjoying it. I don't understand Morgan. Why would Morgan not like Sue because she doesn't like Blake? This part I don't get. I don't get not liking the woman because she likes someone that you don't like. Just don't like the man. That's good enough. But hey, maybe I'm missing something that's going on off camera. It's got to be something else going on off camera, because Jeffri has way too much heat for Sue, just because Sue took up for Blake. It's too much heat. I don't get it. It's way too much heat for Sue. Andre is back, of course. We see him all hugged up with Jeffri. Jeffri's like, I'm so glad that you're back. Who knew that these two was talking off camera all this time? I tell you, Jeffri is a professional, and if anyone wants to learn how to catch men in your web, people really need to study this tape on Jeffri, because she is a professional. And we still see Mark Anthony all hugged up on the couch with Jeffri. Like I said, Jeffri's a man collector. What's the old saying? Don't hate the player, hate the game. You can't be hating on Jeffri, because let me tell you, she's effective. She's effective no matter what, if you don't agree with her tactics, her style, her personality, whatever. She is effective. But when Jeffri was sitting over there in the corner with Andre, they was hugged up and they was rubbing on each other, talking about, welcome back, Andre. I'm so glad you're back. She looked over to Jeffri and said, I hope you feel like I handled that situation with Sue and Blake with style and grace. Girl, no, you didn't. But the fact that she turned that situation around and made her seem like she was the victim, and that she had to rise above the fray, and so she had to handle it with style and grace. Girl, you were the aggressor. I'm telling you, Jeffri could sell someone something that doesn't exist, like a lake in a desert or something. I don't know. She knows how to charm the pants off of men. She knows how to put candy in these men's ears so that they just melt around her, even though the stuff she's saying is bullshit. I'm telling you, she's almost like a man who knows how to charm a woman, but none of his stuff is true. We know he's a player. She's like a Tony almost. It's really wild to watch. But she did sit up there and tell Andre, I hope you think I handled that situation with Blake and Sue with style and grace. And I was like, girl, you weren't the victim. You were the aggressor. Sue wasn't even trying to comfort you, and Blake really don't want to have no conversations with you at all. So how were you handling it with style and grace when you're the aggressor? Calling people names just because you say it sweetly, girl. Jeffri's good. Jeffri is really, really good, y'all. It's for me, I'm gonna tell you, I talk about her a lot, but it is a joy to watch stuff like this in action, because I always wonder how people out here in the world get by, and now you get to see it right on camera. It's amazing to watch, actually. But now I also know why Andre is easy pickings for Jeffri, because when he went over here to Mercedes and started digging in a Mercedes talking about, why didn't you call me when I was off the show. First of all, when you off the show, you off the show. Why would I be calling you? I don't know why he expected Mercedes to be calling him. I didn't even think Mercedes was one of his top picks. All he kept talking about was Jeffri. So Mercedes was thinking out of sight, out of mind. You right about that. You was not on her mind. I don't know if Andre thinks he's like some 90s pop band superstar, Ralph Tresvant. Who does Ralph Tresvant from A New Edition? Who does Andre think he is that he's off the show and people gonna still be calling him? I guess Andre knew he was coming back, but nobody else knew he was coming back, and he made the wrong assumption. But he obviously needs a lot of attention. And guess what? That makes him a prime pickings for a person like Jeffri. Like I said, Jeffri's like a guy who can go and tell women sweet things and they believe it because those women are thirsty and hungry for attention. Well, guess what? Andre's thirsty. Now you want to flip the script on male and female. Andre is thirsty. His throat is dry when he's coming around here giving Mercedes a hard time about not calling him when he was at home sick with COVID off the show. Boy, get out of here, Andre. You're ridiculous. But then we see this other little scene between Morgan, Marcy, and Anthony. And let me tell you, this is the first time. It's really not the first time, but it's the time it really starts to hit home with me, with Morgan. I'm telling you, I'm afraid of Morgan. After this episode, I'm afraid of Morgan, and men should be afraid of Morgan. And I tell you, always listen to what people say, even though they laugh afterwards, they mean it. There's a scene in this episode, and we'll talk about that too, when Marcy tells Tony, I'll hurt you. Absolutely. She'll hurt you. She absolutely will hurt you. Morgan is a little bit crazy. I'm going to say it. She's a little bit of fatal attraction, obsession. She's a little bit of that, you guys. I'm telling you, something about Morgan tells me she's the girl who will bust out your window, bust out your headlights, key your car. There is some crazy in Morgan. And she was over here trying to hem up Anthony, talking about queens don't chase. Anthony should have said, kings don't chase a women they don't want. Anthony don't want Marcy. Anthony don't want Marcy, and Anthony doesn't want Morgan. Does Morgan think everybody should be chasing her? Should everybody be chasing Morgan? I know you're pretty and everything, Morgan, but do you think everyone should be chasing you? Anthony says, I'm not interested in any of you people. I told you from the beginning, the only two people I really liked were Cynthia and Mercedes. And the only reason I even talked to you people is to stay on the show because you almost voted me off the last time. I'm not really interested in you. Anthony ain't interested in Morgan and Marcy, but they got him over here hemmed up in the corner telling him what he needs to do. That was way too much. Then you had Janique over here talking to Lyndon, talking about, yeah, there's a lot of people on this show who have connections with some people, but it's not reciprocated. And Lyndon couldn't do nothing but laugh and say, oh, you preaching to the choir, because that's my story. I was all thinking I had a connection with Mercedes, and she dropped me in the friend zone real quick last week. We saw that. She sure did. One thing about Mercedes is she don't lie to you. She does not lie to you. If you come up on her and you hem her up, she gonna tell you the truth. If you don't want to know the truth, do not talk to Mercedes, because she's gonna tell you. And she told Lyndon right away, you in the friend zone. So Lyndon couldn't do nothing but laugh at Jonique and say, girl, you preaching to the choir, because I'm in the friend zone of all these people. None of my feelings is reciprocated. He's talking about none of his feelings are reciprocated. That's true. He's in the friend zone with everyone. But in the end, they start rattling off their top choices. Who we had? Cynthia's top choice was Andre. Jeffri, it was Andre. Andre said it was his top choice was Jeffri. He called Cynthia a saint. I'm telling you, Cynthia is a professional. Blue, of course, it was Jeffri and Marcy. Mark Anthony was into Jeffri. Mercedes, Mark Anthony, and Mercedes. Jeffri liked Mark Anthony. Anthony liked Cynthia and Mercedes. And then they got to the men. And the men, Blake, of course, was with Suann. Suann was with Blake. I know everybody wants Blake and Suann to get voted off, but I'm not really for that, because I don't think the show is about voting off people you don't like. It was about voting off people who don't have connections, right? And honestly, Blake and Suann have a connection. Whether you agree that she should be going out with Blake, whether you don't like Blake, whether you don't like Suann, the point of the matter is that they have a connection. So why should they get voted off before a person who doesn't have a connection? Earlier on, I thought Blake should have been put off episode 2, episode 1. But what he did was he shifted real quick. He went out and bought a Suanna bracelet. And he started whispering sweet nothing in her ear so he could solidify that connection. And so now a Suanna is bought and paid for. Suanna is bought and paid for. So you know what? Hey, he played the game. Just like Jeffrey's playing the game, so is Blake. And I'm not for sure he should be voted off just because people don't like him. That's just my opinion. There are too many other people on here at this point that actually don't have connections that should be voted off. But in the end, on the chopping block ended up being Mark Anthony and Anthony, and Blake for once wasn't on the bottom. And they ended up giving a lifeline to Mark Anthony and giving him a second chance. We knew they weren't going to put Mark Anthony off. How could they put Mark Anthony off? And he got Jeffri hemmed up, and he got Mercedes over here, heart palpitations. She's so hot and heavy over Mark Anthony. No way they could get rid of him. So they did correctly. They gave him a lifeline. And then the bottom was Jonique and Suanne. I didn't think Suanne should go home because she obviously has a clear connection. Jonique didn't have a connection, and so she didn't get the lifeline. I know everybody was mad that they didn't give Jonique the lifeline. What for? Why give Jonique the lifeline? She didn't have a connection. So what was one more week or one more time on the show going to do for her? No, Jonique's person ain't here. Let her go on home and let her get back to doing what she needs to do if she really wants to find a man, get married, or whatever else. Let her go back and smooth out some of them rough edges that Jonique needs to smooth out here in the dating world. But she left. I really liked the way that Jonique left. I liked her speech. She said, what did she say? She says, I leave with grace, a pride, and dignity, and I know that a man will accept her for who she is. I loved it. But I'll just say one thing, Jonique. No. Don't talk about getting a man who accept you for who you are. Still smooth out some of those rough edges because there's nothing. You still need some improvement. People don't have to accept you for who you are. Don't get stuck there saying you're not going to make no improvements. But I did like the fact that she left with some grace, some pride, some dignity, all that. I really do think she did do that and embodied that. But then let's get on to these one-on-one dates. And so one of the first one-on-one dates we saw was with Suanne and Anthony. And Suanne pulled up in her Maserati, all dressed in her yellow. A get it girl. Now I see why some women might not like Suanne. They might be jealous. They might be a bit jealous. Because let me tell you, Suanne has got class. She's got style. She's got a lot of things a lot of women out here would be envious of. Does that mean she's perfect? Does it mean that she doesn't have some negatives that some people aren't envious of? Absolutely. But let me tell you, Suanne is smart, and she drove up in that Maserati. A lot of these women are probably trying to thrive to be some of the things that Suanne is. But Suanne walked into Anthony's house. He had on these house slippers. I didn't like it. I mean, I understand you don't want to wear shoes in your house. That's okay. I don't really wear shoes in my house all that much either. I mean, I don't have a hard and fast rule, but I take them off. But let me tell you, if I'm coming over your house for a date, I don't have on no fuzzy slippers. Don't have on no fuzzy slippers. I mean, you could have just had on socks, or you could have had on some other kind of slippers. But fuzzy slippers, Anthony, fuzzy slippers, I didn't like that. And then he had this little doormat on the door talking about, B, do you think you're going to walk in here with your shoes on or something? I don't know. It was giving me some queen behavior. It really was. I mean, I was looking at Anthony. I was like, what's going on, Anthony? What is going on up in here? But he seemed to have a nice house. And I guess he cooked dinner for Morgan. He cooked dinner for Suanne, or he set it up like a meal prep, or like they was chef in the kitchen. I don't know. And they sort of cooked it together. So I like that about him. He was thoughtful and considerate. But here we go. Suanne talking about, am I on your list? Am I on your list? And here Anthony barely can get his food down, about to choke on his food and choke on his drink. Because he's like, how am I going to get this lie out my throat? He like this, let me get this lie ready. Yeah, you on my list. Boy. You know Suanne is not on your list. She is not on your list at all. But he got that lie out. He really did get that lie out. But he ain't good with it. He is not really good with the lies, not at all. He told you women from the very beginning, I'm busy. I got a lot going on in my life. I don't have time to really court no women. He didn't say it like that, but he was really saying it. It's what Mercedes picked up on him when Mercedes says, I don't think there's room in my life for you. Anthony wants a type of woman to come into his life, and I think it's a woman to do stuff for him. I don't think Anthony's really there to do too much for a woman. He doesn't show any initiative in that area, and when he talks about what he's looking for, it has always been talked about from the context of what he needs from a woman for him. He doesn't really talk about what he can give to a woman. Anthony really ain't ready to love. He's not ready to love because he hasn't made no room in his life for a woman. I'm going to say it right there. He really isn't ready to love. He may need a woman, but he ain't ready. His lies are so bad that he told Suanne, some women stand out more than other women's. But then didn't mention her name. Suanne was like, what? How are you going to talk about other women stand out more than other women, but I'm sitting here right in front of you and you don't even mention my name? Exactly, Suanne, because you ain't one of the women that stand out more than other women. He didn't want to lie. So he didn't name no names, but Suanne knew she wasn't included. Boy, this was a mess. He tried to redeem himself. Suanne tried to say, you know what, maybe the way you can redeem yourself is dance with me. They danced. They must have did some little Haitian dance. I don't know. That's sort of sexy. Maybe that's what got Suanne maybe thinking a little bit more about him. But Suanne ain't interested in Anthony either. She's just trying to get one more person to vote for her because she knows she's going to need a more than Blake to keep her on this show. She ain't dumb. Next, we had the date with Morgan and Tony. And let me tell you, this another time when my antennas started going up and I start thinking, oh my God, is this like a Fatal Attraction thing about to start playing out with Morgan and Tony? I'm telling you, Morgan is something else. Now, we knew that she was aggressive. We knew that she was assertive. We knew that she was forward. She needs to do all this. But let me tell you, this is more than assertive and aggressive. She's starting to get to me quite a possessive and a little bit, when we start seeing her little thing with Blake later on, combative. I'm telling you, Morgan is scaring me, and any man, I might need to be afraid of Morgan. She might be like the woman, who's that woman back in the day that cut off that man's penis? Woo! Morgan is giving me those vibes, y'all. She's giving me the vibes of the woman who cut off that man's penis in bed. What was that woman's name? Because Morgan's over here like, Tony, I know you like to work the room, but the problem is you like to work the room with everyone else and you need to cut it out. I was like, dang, cut it out. Good Lord, is he a little boy? Are you chastising him? She said, you need to cut it out. She said, you are too friendly and I don't like it. And she laughed and everything afterwards, but you knew she was dead serious. And she basically said, if you don't cut it out, I might hurt you. And then she started laughing. She was serious, Tony. She was serious. When she said she might hurt you, she is serious. You better really listen. I'm telling you, there are some cracked windshields. There's some hot grits on somebody. There's some busted tires, punctured tires, flat tires. There's some keyed cars in Morgan's history. There absolutely is. Where are the ex-boyfriends? Aren't we going to get to meet the exes next week? I want to meet an ex of Morgan because I guarantee you there is some violence in some of her past relationships. It's got to be. Can't no woman talk like this and never make good on none of it. Morgan is talking real tough. And I'm telling you, over the course of her life, she has made good on some of these threats. I guarantee you. She ain't all talk. She has made good on some of them. She started talking about his lips, talking about, but those are my lips. Those lips shouldn't be on anybody else. He was like, come on over here and get these lips. And boy, that was a turn on for Morgan. She pounced right over there. I tell you, Morgan loves the chase. She loves the chase. And the more that Tony the Tiger slithers away from her, the stronger Morgan comes. If Tony really looked at what was going on, instead of him chasing her, he could chase her a little bit, but he is doing just what he needs to keep roping her in because she likes the chase. I'm telling you, I'm starting to see a little bit of I'm seeing like some signs that Morgan could be a little bit obsessive. I'm not kidding you. I am not kidding you. And then we had this date with Jeffri and Mark Anthony. I'm going to say when they first went to this date and I saw another date with Jeffri and Mark Anthony, I was like, not another date with Jeffri and Mark Anthony. Because remember, at this time, I hadn't even seen the date with Mercedes and Mark Anthony, and I was mad. I was fit to be tied. I almost threw my house slipper at the TV. I almost took my slipper that Anthony had on and threw it at the TV. I was getting hot. I was like, I don't want to see another date with Jeffrey. Please, no more dates with Jeffrey. Can we see some other dates? And but you know what? Once this date got going, I was happy to see, because a lot of things happened on this date. First of all, I want to say this. I was wrong. I was wrong. All these weeks when I was saying that Mark Anthony was using Jeffrey and that he didn't really like Jeffrey, I'm wrong. I'm going to tell you guys right now, I am pretty clear on this episode that I've been wrong about that, and that Mark Anthony really, really does have some sort of connection, feeling, whatever you want to say, for Jeffrey. I was really not believing it at first, but I'm telling you, when I look at Mark Anthony and the way he leans into Jeffrey, when Mark Anthony is with Jeffrey, he can't keep his hands off of her. His hands are always on her waist, always around her shoulders. When he sits down with her, he's darn near sitting in her lap. He is so close to her face. And Jeffrey talks about it all the time, talking about he's so forward with her. He just comes for her. He doesn't matter who's in the room. He just says whatever. It is what she's saying. He doesn't care that even Mercedes is in the room, supposedly his other connection. He always will go for Jeffrey if she is around. This soft and sensitive side that Jeffrey has drawn a Mark Anthony in. And let me tell you, he is in. He's in, you guys. I'm telling you, this is not him just playing Jeffrey. I don't believe it. So when Jeffrey started talking about, I have a secret to tell you, or I have something to tell you, I really didn't know what she was going to have to tell him. I thought she was going to tell him that, she was dropping him as her number one. But she is dropping him as her number one, because I think she's kind of flipping over here to Anthony and or maybe Blue. So she definitely is dropping him, and I'm going to talk about that. But I thought that's what she was going to tell him and be truthful. But then I thought, you know what? Jeffrey ain't truthful. Jeffrey ain't truthful. She ain't going to never tell him that. She ain't going to never let a spider out her web before she needs to. But anyway, she ended up telling him that she had Crohn's disease. And I'm going to tell you this. I remember when I first saw Jeffrey, I remember thinking my first thought for Jeffrey was that she was on steroids. Because I've had a lot of friends who've had diseases. Not a lot of friends. Actually, my sister had lupus. And then a friend of mine had MS, and they were all on steroids. And when they got on steroids, one of the things that happened to them, their arms would get sort of puffy. And they weren't big women, but their arms got puffy. And I remember seeing Jeffrey, and I noticed her arms reminded me of the arms I saw of my friend who had MS and my friend who had my sister who had lupus, and they both were on steroids. And I remember thinking about Jeffrey, wow, she's got those sort of arms. I never said anything about it because, who would say that on YouTube? But now that she tells us that she has Crohn's disease, it makes sense. It makes sense of what I was seeing before. And it really was a sad story to hear. But it also made me understand even more Jeffrey's game. You see, a lot of people are on this show just to maybe find love, play a game, be on IG, maybe promote their business. But let me tell you, Jeffrey is here really to find a husband. She's really here to find a husband. Jeffrey is saying, I can't go through this world alone. We thought it was just about Jeffrey going through the world alone because she had 3 children. And now we find out Jeffrey's ill with Crohn's disease. And I think Crohn's disease is a chronic illness. I don't even think there's no cure. I think they can manage it, but I don't think it's something you can get completely cured of. And Jeffrey has realized that, hey, you know what? I need a partner. Now, this is what, people used to get married for back in the day. People used to have kids to help them on the farm, to help the kids go out and work and bring more money into the income. And people used to get married for sickness and in health, which meant that when you were ill or when you were maybe on down in your life, you had a partner in your life that could carry some of the load and pick you up. And now people are out here getting married for muscles, IG partners, someone to take vacation with, superficial stuff. But Jeffrey right here is showing you what marriage, one of the benefits of marriage is about. And that, there's going to come a time when everybody out here needs somebody. There's going to come a time when you're going to need somebody, and it's not, the person you need is not going to have nothing to do with how fine they are, which is what people out here shopping for people now, how fine they are. You're going to need somebody to pick you up when your bones are aching, when you're sick. And a lot of people, what they don't want to do is they don't want to do the work now because the payback is too late. They think, well, I'm not going to be sick for another 50 years or 30 years. So why do I need to invest in people and relationships now? My question would be for Jeffri is, I wonder how strong her investment in people were, because she really does probably need another person in her life. She's got young kids with Crohn's disease. Can you imagine how difficult that is, caring for a 2-year-old with the disease that she has? My heart goes out to her for the job that she has, and I imagine that she's tired. Jeffri says she has a 15-year-old, and I thought Jeffri was only 32. Jeffri don't look 32. Really, Jeffri looks like she's more like mid 30s, or is Jeffri lying about her age? I don't know, y'all. But I just can imagine the workload with working, paying bills, dealing with Crohn's disease, raising 3 kids, 15, a 5, and 2. And man, she definitely needs a partner. So Jeffri has a lot more at stake out here than a lot of these other women. So I can see why she's going a lot harder out here. I understand the game she is playing. And let me tell you, it's actually not a game. She's for real. And like I said, don't hate the player, hate the game, because Jeffri is doing what she needs to do to land her a man and a husband that's not only going to come in and take care of these kids, but that's going to go take care of her. Like she says, she needs a protector, a provider, a leader, and she needs to add a caretaker, because she's going to need that. She absolutely needs that. And when I look at all these men she's lining up between the Mark Anthony, the Blue, and the Andre, I'm going to tell you right now, her best bet is going to be Blue. Because as much as I say that Mark Anthony is into Jeffri, he's not into it for this. He barely doesn't even want no kids. I think he was going to be good with taking Jeffri out, sleeping with Jeffri, having a good time with Jeffri. But Mark Anthony wasn't going to become no stepdaddy. And he definitely is not ready to be a caretaker for someone with a chronic disease. I know he's in the medical field, so maybe he has some of those traits to him where he's used to dealing with people who are dealing with chronic illnesses. But I don't see him as being the one that's going to take care of Jeffri when she's having a bad day with her Crohn's disease. And I also don't see Andre, because Andre is into himself, because he was mad when Mercedes didn't even call him for 1 week, because Andre wasn't even gone that long, and he was mad at Mercedes for not calling him. How is he now going to become a caretaker for Jeffri? He's too busy worried about himself. She needs to go and get Blue, who is sitting at home with those fish and those cats. That's going to be her best bet. Someone who's calm natured, and who's going to be at home all the time with her, with those cats and those fish, and she going to need to overlook all that. Blue is going to be Jeffri's best bet. And Jeffri smart. I really want to see who Jeffri chooses, because I do believe it's Jeffri's choice. Jeffri is going to get a choice, and I want to see who she going to choose between these 3 men. But I'm going to tell her, she may like to roll around in the sheets with Mark Anthony. He may be the exciting one, the fine one. But based on her life, 3 kids and a chronic illness, she better choose Blue. She better choose Blue. But even when they had this kiss, I'm telling you, Mark Anthony leaned in to Jeffri and gave her a kiss. Here's the kiss right here, y'all, because we're going to compare this kiss to the kiss later on when he starts kissing on Mercedes, because I want to know which kiss was more passionate, y'all. Which one do you think? I'll let you know once we get to the Mark Anthony and the Mercedes date. So now we move on. We back on another date with Morgan and Tony, and the same old stuff, the same old Fatal Attraction movie waiting to happen. Because Tony is going to do something that requires Morgan to bust out his windows. Tony is absolutely going to do something that makes Morgan go bust out his windows, and she's going to say, I told you so. I told you I was going to hurt you, and you should have believed me when I told you. And Tony was like, Morgan is putting on the pressure. She is putting on the pressure because Morgan knows how to lay it on thick. She chastised Tony once again and told him, you play too much. You need to be thinking about the right things. You need to get back on track. You thinking about the wrong things. She is trying to put this man in line. Tony the Tiger. She trying to tame the tiger. Girl, you're going to need more than some strong words. You're going to need some of that what's that injection they do to calm the tigers down for the circus, to put the tigers asleep. She better bring a syringe. She better bring more than these tough words. She better bring a syringe for Tony the Tiger. Because, girl, this ain't nothing but fuel to his fire. She tried to tell Tony, Lyndon, the only one that ain't scared of you. He ain't scared of you. He don't back down from you, even though he knows you in the hunt. Girl, Morgan was talking tough. She's like, Lyndon ain't backing down for you. Remember, y'all, these were supposed to be the church people. Do y'all remember in the very episodes, Morgan and Tony the Tiger was supposed to be the church people talking about God? I guess they still are in the Bible, though, but they in the Old Testament. They in the part of the Bible where everybody's dying and getting stabbed and getting slayed, David and Goliath. They back in the Old Testament stories where there was a lot of carnage and a lot of death and a lot of killings going on. Let me tell you, they not the Christians from the New Testament, forgive and forget. They the Christians from the Old Testament. They the Christians of BC, before Christ. I can't stop, y'all. I can't believe these two were the Bible thumping Christians knocking on the door at the beginning of the episodes. And now we sit here at the table talking to these two, and I'm telling you, there ain't a Bible verse coming out their mouth. Tony better start saying, "No weapon formed against me will prosper." And Morgan might prosper. I'm telling you, better respect Morgan's game, Tony. You better respect her. I don't know if you've ever come up against an opponent like Morgan. No weapon formed against you may prosper. Okay, I don't know. You men have never seen the weapons that Morgan got. She got a lot of them, and she whips them out later on Blake. She whips them out and comes for him and slices off his neck, y'all. But let me come on and go back to this next date with Mercedes and Mark Anthony, because this is the date I've been waiting for 3 weeks. I kept saying, when am I going to see the chemistry between Mark Anthony and Mercedes? And I'm going to tell you, when Mark Anthony first came in and sat in that chair all casually next to a Mercedes, I was like, ooh, this is a completely different energy. When he sat down with Jeffri, he was darn near in her lap. But on this date, he's sitting in his chair all casually. He don't seem nervous. He ain't staring into her eyes like he does with Jeffri. I was thinking, and then I was thinking, well, maybe they've been seeing each other off camera, so they're so comfortable with each other. And then Mercedes tells us that they really haven't had a lot of one-on-one dates, a lot of conversation. So I don't know if that means they haven't been talking or they haven't had dates. But she was excited about this date. Her excitement could not be contained. She was finally excited to get a date with Mark Anthony and on camera. So most of their time was talking about going on flight lessons, and she wanted to be a pilot and he wanted to be a pilot, about his dreams of being a pilot, and about, how she can't wink. I can't wink either, Mercedes. I can't wink. I flutter my eyes all the time, but I can't wink one at a time. So I don't know what's wrong with us. What is wrong with us that we don't know how to wink? And Mercedes is rubbing all over him, and Mark Anthony is like, shoot, you better start rubbing all over me, because a genie might pop out, and that genie ain't gonna be blue. That was kind of funny, Mark Anthony. That was funny. And Mercedes like, you are wild, but you know what? Are you getting my panties wet? I'm telling you, Mercedes was getting moist. She started sticking out that tongue and licking her lips, all like that. She was like, I can't wink, but I sure know how to lick my lips. I know how to send a message. I can't flirt with you and wink, but I know how to lick my lips. Mark Anthony saw that, and he, you know what? And he did a little bit different than was with Jeffri. When he was with Jeffri, he moved in on Jeffri. He leaned into Jeffri. Jeffri barely didn't have to move because he went all the way over in her space. But when it came to Mercedes and she was licking her lips and everything, I saw the part where Mark Anthony gave her a little clue and said, like, come on. He didn't move, though. He said, come on. He did one of Tony the Tiger's move. He said, come on and get it. That's what he said, come on and get it. That's what Tony the Tiger said to Morgan, come on and get it. And then Morgan got up and went over and snatched them lips off of Tony. But then, here in this particular situation, Mark Anthony was real subtle. He said, he said a little something, whispered to her, and that's when she leaned in. She came all the way mostly over to his space, and they had a big old juicy kiss, a big old juicy open mouth kiss. So at first I was saying to myself, ooh, I don't know, Mercedes. I feel like more you were the one kissing a Mark Anthony, more so. And then in the Jeffrey, Mark Anthony, he was kissing Jeffrey. I know I would be nervous if I were Mercedes and I saw the Jeffrey kiss. Mercedes, you need to be a little bit nervous. You need to be a little bit nervous on this because I'm not quite sure who was the number one. But I will say this, the Mercedes and the Mark Anthony kiss definitely was juicier. And I'm going to put these two pictures up side by side because the other thing I noticed on looking at these pictures is Mercedes and Mark Anthony's kiss is mouth open. Maybe it's because Mercedes is prying Mark Anthony's lips open. Give me that tongue, boy. Give me that tongue. But his lips are more open. But on the kiss with Jeffrey, it's more of the pursed lips. It's more of, it's not a peck. It's a long peck, but it's no open mouth kissing. And you can also see how Jeffrey didn't open her mouth for that kiss too much for Mark Anthony to get in there. And let me tell you, Mercedes was like, I'm ready to receive all of you. And when I say all of you, a Mercedes is ready to get it. She was not holding back. She was saying, I've only had one date with Mark Anthony, so I'm going to shoot my shot and I'm going to shoot it big because I may never be here again. Mercedes was going for broke. But you know what? She better lay it out there because Jeffrey is a professional and she might have been like me where she underestimated the attraction of Mark Anthony to Jeffrey in the beginning and thinking it was just like some little thing. But let me tell you, Mercedes, I don't think it was some little thing. So maybe you did right by planting that big old juicy kiss on Mark Anthony. But I was glad I finally got to see the chemistry. But I still don't know, y'all. I still don't know. What do you think? Do you think who's going to go with who, y'all? Is Mark Anthony going to go with a Mercedes? And I think it may be, even if Mark Anthony goes with Mercedes, I really do believe it because Jeffrey doesn't take Mark Anthony. That's what I think. I don't even think it's Mark Anthony's choice anymore, y'all. I think Jeffrey has a whole lot more at stake here, and I think she's going to make a different decision than the one for Mark Anthony. But the last date we're going to leave, the last date that we end up seeing, which really wasn't a date, I'm going to call it more of an execution because that's really what it was. It was a premeditated execution, and it was between Morgan and Blake. And once again, Blake got his neck cut off by one of these women. I'm going to tell you, as much as people want to talk about Blake, he has really held himself together between these women, between the attacks of Jeffrey and the attacks of Morgan. I'm going to tell y'all, no matter who he is, whether he's a douchebag, whether he's a liar, whether he's whatever, I'm going to commend him for the way he has held it together under these attacks. And to be honest with you, Morgan really made herself look bad. She came on here to make Blake look bad. She came on here to go after the neck of Blake and to maybe expose him and tell him how he's a cancer. But the truth of the matter is, my perspective of Morgan went down a lot in this episode. It went down a whole lot. And so actually she did Blake a favor because I actually am here now giving Blake some credit and I'm putting Morgan down. If you remember, Morgan was one of my favorites, but she's definitely not one of my favorites anymore because I'm starting to learn that I don't really like her style too much. I really don't. And this thing that she did with Blake, this confrontation, I don't think you're a benign cancer. I think that you are a malignant cancer. I don't get it. I understand that what she was upset about, or as she said, she really wasn't upset and she really wasn't hurt. Then girl, why all the energy? Why all the energy? If you weren't hurt and you weren't upset or you weren't offended or you weren't nothing, then I don't understand the energy for Blake. I really don't. I mean, I would be offended by what he said. So what's wrong with admitting that you were offended? But to say you're not offended, but then to come with all this energy, that doesn't make any sense to me. That tells me you like a confrontation. Jeffrey, just like Jeffrey told Andre, I hope I handled it with style and dignity because I really don't like confrontation. Girl, you love confrontation. You love confrontation. And here is Morgan creating confrontation as well. And so Blake came out and said, well, I apologize. And she said, well, what are you apologizing for if you don't even know what you did? Girl, Morgan, come on now. He apologized. Now he's asking you what did he do? And now you're saying he didn't do anything to hurt you. Then what are you here for, Morgan? What are you here for but to slice his neck off? I'm telling you, Morgan got knocked down several layers. And Tony better watch this clip back, because like she said, I will hurt you. She will absolutely hurt a person. She'll cut you. She will cut you. And let me tell you another part where I departed from Morgan, because she said that some of the mean things, or I can't even call them mean, because I guess she don't think they was mean. She just didn't like them. But whatever, Morgan. She said some things about Blake and said, well, he said, well, once you have kids, you'll get nothing that you want. First of all, Blake is negative. We all know that. That's negative talk that Blake is talking about. I understand it on an intellectual level, which is true, that once you have kids, more of your life becomes about kids. But that's just a negative way to put it. We all know who Blake is. Blake is negative. But when Morgan started going on into this thing about I don't need a man and I don't need kids, I said, oh, here we go. Here we go. Here comes the I don't need the man speech. But yet she is chasing down a Tony the Tiger like he's the last meal in the jungle. But she don't need a man. Every time I hear a woman say, I don't need a man, I always know it's a cover up for something more. I always know it's a cover up for something more. I don't know quite what it is going on with Morgan, but every time I hear a woman say, I don't need a man, they're saying it as a put down. Okay. They're saying it as a put down to that person in front of them. It's basically saying, I don't need you. You don't have no power over me. And that's what she's saying to Blake. I don't need you. You don't have no power over me. It was a whole lot of energy for a situation in which she said she really wasn't hurt. To me, it sounded like a Blake must have hit a trigger. He must have hit a soft point in Morgan. And Morgan has all the heat for him now. All of it. Morgan was like, who hurt you? Who hurt you? And I was like, oh, we definitely know somebody hurt Blake in the past. We know Blake is walking around with a lot of hurts, a lot of wounds, a lot of issues. But Morgan thinks that she's exposing all his hurts and all his wounds. No, Morgan is also exposing all of hers at the same time. Girl, this is a situation where you just need to be quiet. You need to be quiet because you are doing more harm to yourself than good. Walk away, Morgan. Walk away. She said, I don't think you need to be on the show. I don't think your intentions are good. I think you're lying to women. I think you're taking advantage of women. First of all, who is Blake taking advantage of when the only woman that likes him is Sue Ann? What are the women that he's lying to? He could only be lying to one woman. That's Sue Ann. And you already had some bad words to say about Sue Ann. So I don't even think you like Sue Ann. So you're over here getting in the face of a man who you say is lying to a bunch of women, but the only women that even really like him is a woman that you don't even like. So who are you really defending, Morgan? You don't like Sue Ann, so you're not defending her. And who is he lying to when the only woman he's really connected to is Sue Ann? I just don't get all this heat, y'all. I don't get it. She called him a fraud and an imposter and a not a good person. And basically told him, get away from me. And he told her, good, just worry about your own connections. Let me get up here and go. That was a mess of a date. Like I said, it wasn't a date. It was an execution. It was a mess. And let me tell you, it really did do more harm than good for Morgan. To me, it didn't put her in a good light for me. I don't know about y'all, or what do you think? I actually think that Blake handled himself well. Does it mean that I like Blake? Absolutely not. I know who Blake is. I know who Blake is, but I had already made up my mind about who Blake was. So my surprise was Morgan this episode. I gotta say that was the biggest bombshell for me. This whole episode was seeing more of Morgan's personality, not only with Tony, but more of her personality with Anthony, and now her personality with Blake. And let me tell you, I was disappointed. I was disappointed. But anyway, that's it, y'all. What do you think about the episode? I'll talk to you later. Bye.